Oh wait, I'm not. Okay. Okay.
Look up, wife. Mr. Bean. Okay, come on, this one. Make sure you just give me a copy.
Gotcha.
Okay, my name is Juanita Gillespie, and the topic of my speech is the importance of wearing a seatbelt. About when I was 9 years old, I lost one of the men I was really close to. My uncles and I have always been close throughout my whole entire life. My uncle was in a car crash, and the car was totaled, and the only reason he survived was because he was wearing a seatbelt. He suffered a major scratch to his chest, and that day, both of us were persuaded to wear seatbelts at all times. My general purpose is to inform you to wear seatbelts, and my specific purpose is to persuade you to wear a seatbelt because of many things that can happen. Seatbelts were made for people. You should wear them all the time because it's law. According to EHS OK State, 4,000 people die each year in car accidents. Car accidents are the leading death of people under the age of 35. Seatbelts could prevent half the deaths that happen in accidents. Many people know these things but still find reasons not to wear seatbelts. People come up with the most ridiculous reasons not to wear seatbelts. According to Safety by Choice, people say they don't wear seatbelts because they mess up their clothing and they're uncomfortable. Also, another reason is because they shouldn't be required by law to wear seatbelts. The most common excuse for people is because I'm a good driver. People need to realize that good drivers get into car accidents too. Seatbelts. A seatbelt is also called a safety belt. It's worn in a vehicle to restrain forward motion in the event of a collision. Seatbelts have saved more than 75,000 lives from 2004 to 2008. I should know this because my mother was one of them. A drunk driver hit her one night, but she was saved because of her seatbelt. It caused my family a lot of physical and emotional trauma. According to eHow.com, George Cayley was the first person to create a seatbelt. Planes were the first vehicles to have seatbelts, and now Boeing is accredited for making the modern day seatbelt. Just because you're a good driver doesn't mean you shouldn't wear a seatbelt. Seatbelts were made for the safety of drivers. You should even wear your seatbelt in the back seat. If you are pregnant also, many people think it's alright not to wear a seatbelt because it's under those two circumstances. I think otherwise. According to NCS, in 2009, 1,600 lives could have been saved, and 2,000 injuries could have been prevented if people would have worn their seatbelt. Seatbelt usage has increased nationally to 88% versus the 69% in 1988. Seatbelt usage is the lowest among African Americans. It's also higher among women than men. And many people driving with passengers are more likely to wear a seatbelt than when driving alone. Just because you're a good driver doesn't mean you shouldn't have to wear a seatbelt. In 49 states, including the District of Columbia, excluding New Hampshire, have mandatory seatbelt laws. According to PolicyAlmanac.org, states' primary enforcement have 78% people who wear seatbelts, while secondary states only have 68% rate of people wearing their seatbelts. In March of 1987, this was the first month seatbelts were enforced for people to wear, and the death rate in car accidents went down by 17%. These laws were made to protect, and because of this law, thousands survive each year in car accidents. Just because you're a good driver doesn't mean you shouldn't wear a seatbelt. Wearing your seatbelt could be enforced. It's just something you want to do just because you know you have a greater chance of living. No one is safe from an accident, and it is law, so click it or ticket. Now I will discuss some of the main points in this speech. Seatbelts save more than 75,000 lives. In 2009, 160 lives could have been saved, and 22,000 injuries could have been prevented in car accidents. And 49 states, including the District of Columbia, excluding New Hampshire, have mandatory seatbelt laws. And my 8th grade year, right before graduation, me and my cousin had the whole entire summer planned out. She lived in Wisconsin, but all our plans ended in one night. It was the week before all the 8th grade activities, and my cousin went to a party with one of her best friends, and 2 of her friends had stolen the car, but my cousin and her friend didn't know it, and they got into the car at the end of this party, and they were driving around. And when the 2 boys saw the police, they panicked and hit a tree. Of course, my cousin and her friend weren't wearing a seatbelt, and my cousin flew through the windshield, and her friend suffered serious brain trauma. My cousin sat there and died, and her friend also died a month later. And a lot of this could have been prevented if all she would have did was wear her seatbelt. Her name was Deanna Cook, and this happened in Wisconsin, and it was so big it made it to the Chicago news. My life experience should influence you to wear a seatbelt. You never know what predicament you may be in, and so wear your seatbelt, because these things that happen to my family could happen to yours. You or someone you know, and you never know, you could be that one in a million. Okay, stop.
That's good, that's good. You did really well.
And how was topic?
I always say you ain't even